In today's video, I'm going to reveal how Barack Obama and Kamala Harris created the world's biggest child trafficking crisis. But before I talk about this, let me share some rather infuriating news with you. I'm sure you remember former Abercrombie and Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries, who was accused of running an international trafficking network.
Smith and Jeffries employed a secret staff to operate these events. The staff ensured that the men signed non-disclosure agreements and handed over their personal items, such as their phones, before the start of the events to maintain the secrecy of these events. The defendants caused the men to believe that not complying with requests for certain acts during the events could harm their careers. The defendants pressured the men to consume alcohol, Viagra, and muscle relaxants known as poppers during the sex events.
Well, I told you he was going to get away with it because he apparently suffered from dementia. Turns out I was right because just a couple of days ago, both the prosecutors and his defense team agreed that he couldn't go to trial.
Attorneys for the former Abercrombie and Fitch CEO Michael Jeffries say he is unable to stand trial in a federal trafficking case due to a dementia diagnosis.
Now keep in mind, he was already out on a $10 million bail, and now he'll be moved to a hospital for round-the-clock care.
His attorneys are asking the court to place Jeffries in state custody and hospitalize him for treatment for 4 months and evaluate to see if his condition improves.
Look, he really might be too sick for any legal action, but this doesn't change the reality. This guy was accused of destroying many lives, and now those people will have no closure and will get pretty much no answers about how he could run such a criminal network with so much impunity. But then again, we live in a country where presidents have started greedy wars and allowed criminals to traffic children across borders. I mean, I'm sure some of you have seen this clip of Barack Obama criticizing Donald Trump.
Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening.
Trump White House has barred the Associated Press indefinitely from participating in the pool of reporters. That includes going into the Oval Office. That includes being on Air Force One.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me I just want to be clear about this.
Sir, you were doing way worse stuff and there was no one to check you. I mean, even channels like CNBC are starting to show how Obama and the Biden administration created the world's most extensive trafficking disaster.
Underground economy of children. It's horrific.
It really is. And that some of it has to do with the policies at the border. And our film isn't political at all.
But what these liberal channels won't show us is that the situation was far worse for many of the kids who were just handed over to random people without any supervision.
Senator, we have a thorough vetting process.
Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Yes, we go through.
No, you do not. You do not. Have you read the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reports on your office? There was one in 2016. There was one in 2018. There was one in 2020. There was one in 2022. Spanning administrations, what they found is you do not require sponsors to document their relationship with the child. You release them anyway. Do you do home visits in all cases? You can actually see where these children are being released, whose care you're putting them in?
We do not do home visits in all cases.
Now, Tom Homan has promised many times to protect these kids.
Do you have an update on the 350,000 missing children under the Biden administration?
We're just now working on that. We just started working on that because the data's been held up. But we started an effort already.
And I'm waiting for him to release numbers so we can find out where these hundreds of thousands of children really are. I'm also waiting to see some kind of legal action against people who allowed this catastrophe to take place. I mean, people around Donald Trump keep telling us this was a crime.
The Biden administration itself, the actual government of the United States, trafficked 500,000 children into this country and helped them to disappear.
I learned a new term while I was at that border, and that was called a disposable child. Border Patrol agents were seeing children, the same child, coming in time and time again, a little boy they recognized over and over coming into our country, and they couldn't figure out why. That child had been trafficked, and he was posing as a family member. They had kidnapped a child, and when they recognized him multiple times, they realized he wasn't part of that family.
So I'm really hoping that Pam Bondi will use the full force of the DOJ to go after anyone who let these kids disappear into our system. I also want her to sue the companies that employed these children to make millions of dollars in the last 10 years.
Hundreds of migrant children across the United States are working long hours in grueling, often dangerous conditions in factories, farms, and mills.
Last October, labor investigators say they found nearly 24 children, some as young as 13, working here inside this massive slaughterhouse.
Antonio is one of tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of children who are in this exact situation. He came through a shelter run by Health and Human Services and was released to somebody who said that he would be a sponsor.
Now, moving on to another story I want to share with you revolves around Nicole Shanahan, who has made a huge claim about those chemtrails in the sky.
And I do know that HHS is in the process of putting together a team to investigate this.
I mean, it would be great if we could use all of our labs to test these chemicals and tell the people how they really affect our crops and our livestock. And I believe this news because Nicole might be the closest ally RFK Jr. has. And she's also been very vocal over the last few months about the issue of geoengineering.
All over the world are seeing these things. They see how it changes the weather, how it results in clouds coming in within, a few hours.
Surfing this morning and was watching the planes flying overhead, and then I couldn't take it anymore. But that is not a contrail. That looked like it started as a contrail maybe, and now it's turning into a cloud. See how thick that is?
Interestingly, I just found out that Donald Trump is pushing to stop any kind of climate research at the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or NOAA.
The Trump administration is reportedly planning to cut parts of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A draft document shows the White House wants to eliminate programs it deemed misaligned with the president's agenda, specifically the labs focused on weather, climate, and ocean studies. The move would reduce the agency's $6 billion budget by 27%. Critics argue it would limit the country's ability to respond to extreme weather and make forecasts less accurate.
According to the circulating documents, the White House is planning to cut the budget of the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research from $485 million down to $171 million. And this kind of budget cut would basically stop any type of climate research at this federal agency. The state of Montana, on the other hand, doesn't care much about chemtrails as they just buried a bill trying to stop this activity.
And Helena, a bill concerned with, quote, weather modification raised some eyebrows today. Ultimately, the bill was shot down on the House floor with a 45 in support and 55 against.
Keep in mind, Republicans dominate the state government, and yet a Democrat said this in the House and basically ended any debate on the subject of chemtrails.
We're on day 71 of the session. We've yet to deliver property tax relief. I think we have far more important things to do than to debate the nuances of chemtrails, contrails, and so much more.
Now, another story I want to talk about concerns Steve Jobs, because a lady has come forward and accused him of some very serious crimes.
So I was to the Apple man, Steve. You know which one. I have to speak in code, otherwise my videos get taken down, and I've already been banned several times. And anyways, I just thought I would make this video because so many people tell me, oh, you need to talk to Kash Patel or Dan Bongino or whomever. Well, I actually had a group that I was working with, conservative group, by the way.
Now, this might just seem like a person who's doing this to get attention, but you gotta understand that Steve Jobs and the people around him have a very interesting history with trafficking. I mean, did you know that Steve Jobs' wife, Laureen Powell Jobs, owns the Atlantic newspaper through her institution called the Emerson Collective? And in 2021, when the entire country was looking for answers about people like Epstein, the Atlantic published an article called The Great Fake Child trafficking epidemic. This article basically called anyone a conspiracy nut if they said that Epstein was backed by powerful people like Bill Gates. Now, why would a paper go after the people who were seeking the truth instead of investigating these creeps? Well, the answer is simple. They were spreading propaganda because Lorene definitely has some very powerful and rich friends. So it kind of makes sense why she would want to downplay the severity of Epstein's crimes. The next story I want to share with you guys comes from Scotland, where a battery recycling plant went up in flames, causing a lot of chaos in the process.
Through the building and loud explosions being heard as the blaze took hold. Around 40 firefighters have been tackling the fire, and nearby residents are being urged to keep their windows and doors closed.
Now, the reason why this piqued my interest is the fact that the plant suffered a similar catastrophe pretty much exactly 1 year ago. So it makes sense why the local government is trying to investigate if this was arson. Now, moving on, let me show you why we really need to end property taxes once and for all.
I just paid my winter property tax bill. I hate to complain. I don't like being a complainer, but it's $4,875. That's for half of the year. And it goes back to what I say is like, we don't actually really own this property. We don't. I'm paying discounted rent essentially for the property. It's around $10,000 a year. We're in Okemos, Meridian Township, Michigan, and so I don't know who voted for this over year after year. It goes up every single year by a few $100, and this is where we're at. There's no legal remedies for it. You can request a hearing. They always affirm it. I'm an attorney. I get calls about this. There's really nothing you can do about it. So I don't know. You don't really own property.
As far as I can see, these property taxes are just their way of reminding us that we don't own shit. They can use all kinds of acts of nature to make our property basically worthless anytime they want. And when they're not doing that, they just keep collecting the rent with total impunity. We're going to stick a fork in it right there. I've talked about some pretty controversial stuff today, and I want to know what you guys think about all of this. So share your comments with everyone in the section below. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.